and we're joined now by our pal Chase Hughes from the Monumental Sports Network. Chase, of course, covering the Wizards. What's up, dude? How are you?
Not much, doing great. I was actually just listening to you on my way home, got stuck in traffic, and of course, that's when the news breaks that they've hired Brian Keefe as their full-time head coach. That's how it always goes, as you well know.
Yes, no. So I was going to ask, kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I guess I'll ask seriously because I guess I know the answer now. Because now, you work for Monumental Sports, and you can't just call up Michael Winger and be like, I know we're kind of separate because I'm media and you're doing the basketball thing, but like, bro, can you give me a heads up? Like, you don't get nothing here. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew that it was going to happen this week, but I was just in the office. Someone could have told me that it was going to happen during my commute home, but
that would have been nice. Alas. Well, thanks for listening, and now thanks for calling, as we say here in the business. What is your reaction to the news? I mean, very simply to start, Chase, like this is. You heard what we've been saying and what the callers have been saying. It's not the sexiest move at all. We kind of anticipated in many ways this would happen. Why do you think it happened? Why do Michael and Will make this move, and what do you make of it?
Well, I'm not surprised. I think it had become a foregone conclusion. And the reason why I felt that way is because at the end of the season, I thought Brian Keefe had done a nice job and had sort of met the criteria that Will Dawkins and Michael Winger had set forth. But it wasn't until I started talking to people around the league in the first few weeks of the offseason that I really kind of gathered that a lot of people around the league thought that Brian Keefe was going to get the job, that people that maybe would have been interested in the job in other circumstances felt like no one outside the organization was the favorite compared to Brian Keefe, so he was the favorite all along. And I think it makes sense why, because going back to the guidelines that Winger and Dawkins set, when they promoted Brian Keefe to the interim job, they said that they were happy with the individual development of their players, but they wanted to see a more competitive team overall. And it took a little while, but I think Brian Keefe got them there. And by the end of the season, they had some of their best wins of the year with him at the helm. And defensively, they were better. And I think accountability was a big reason why they made this move because, he showed that he could hold players accountable, and you heard it from them that he's got a very blunt sort of straight shooter type communication style, and I think the move that epitomized that was putting Jordan Poole on the bench. That's the type of accountability that we haven't often seen with the Wizards, to put a star player on the bench like that, and he was the guy who was able to make that move and bring the best out of Jordan Poole after doing it.
So we've heard stories like that obviously throughout the season, Chase, but I think that when you're a head coach, as you well know, having covered not only, the Wizards like you have, but having covered Major League Baseball and all the different things you've done over the years in your career here in D.C., head coaches, managers, whatever it is, whatever that top coaching job is across the sport, you have to have a big picture outlook of how your team is going to operate. How would you say Brian Keefe handled that part of the job? Because we know he's a great player developer. That's why he was the lead assistant and why he's got the resume he's got, but how did he handle that part of the job in the back half of the season?
Well, I think he matches their timeline in the rebuild overall. You mentioned the player development. That's a big part of it. And the accountability factor, I think, can help them set the type of culture that they want to have is sort of the foundation for the future. So him being a first-time head coach, but also being experienced, also having the track record of working with all the great players that he's worked with over the years. I mean, Kevin Durant among them this past season really sang Brian Keefe's praises in a press conference, saying that, he owes a lot to Brian Keefe. And so I think all those things made him the right guy for the job. And the fact that he is inexperienced as a head coach, I think fits the timeline because they're going to bring a lot of young players into this program. And he's the right guy now, but he also may be able to grow into the right guy when they need the type of coach that can help lead them to the playoffs and contend for the bigger things that they hope to compete for down the road. So I would say that the track record of player development and also the fact that he's not someone who's been a head coach at a really high level before, I think he sort of fits the timeline of a young roster trying to build things from the bottom up.
When you look at this roster, there's obviously going to be some changes over the next couple of weeks. At the very least, there will be an influx of young talent, number 2 pick, number 26 pick, and or however they reorganize themselves in the draft. There's always trades around this time of year. There's obviously free agency coming and some pretty big decisions. Tyus Jones probably being the most notable there for a player that's got to decide whether or not he's coming back. When you think of kind of Keefe's style of play and some of the things that obviously goes up to Will, and Will has talked a lot about style of play, like what is this team, what are the holes, and how does Brian Keefe affect that conversation?
Well, I think they want to be much better defensively than they were last year, and that's where he kind of fits in. I think they changed the way that they defended last year after he took over. There was less switching. There was more on-ball responsibilities. And I think they're going to be able to help themselves in the draft this year because, for whatever has been said about this draft class, a lot of the guys at the top, a lot of the players that are in consideration for the second overall pick, defense is a big part of why they're top prospects in this draft class. And so I think, whether it's a rim protector or another wing defender or somebody who can stop the ball in the perimeter at the guard position, there'll be more pieces to work with. And, guys like Denny Avdi and Bilal Coulibaly will have more help on the defensive end. And I think Brian Keefe will be tasked with sort of putting it all together. So I really think their offseason, like this was obviously first order of business in some respects, but a lot of it hinges directly on what they do with the second overall pick, because whatever player they pick, whatever position they play, that's going to dictate their needs at that position moving forward. And it might dictate a lot more than that because it's going to be, by far the biggest resource they've spent so far on building this roster from the ground up. So they're going to make sure that that player has every opportunity possible to play a lot of minutes, to take a lot of shots, and to have their strengths maximized. So that'll be up to Brian Keefe, but I would point to the defensive end as where they can maybe start building something next year.
Chase Hughes, Monumental Sports Network, with us here on the Hoffman Show. Just in. Chase's colleague, Jason Smith, he's very tall. He's going to join us coming up at 6:30 to react to the breaking news that Brian Keefe is the next Wizards head coach, the interim now getting the full-time job. So wrapping up with you here, Chase, for Keefe, the biggest thing he needs to accomplish in 2024 in the 24-25 season is what? Like, what is, in your mind, the definition of success in a year where the record is still not going to be the primary driver? And even with that said, last season was not what anybody in the organization, as Winger and Dawkins told us after the year, what they wanted it to be. How do they make next year's season-ending press conference different?
I think produce a good baseline for whoever the second overall pick is. That player is going to be so important for their future. Obviously, you want to see guys like Denny Avdi and Bilal Coulibaly continue to build on what they've done. Corey Kispert, all their young guys. Jordan Poole, hopefully, if he's on the team, can have the success that he did down the stretch of last year. But that second overall pick is going to become, really the centerpiece of their future. So if that player can come in and, have an all-rookie campaign, and show some signs of being a real difference maker down the road, I think that would make the season a success on its own. But certainly seeing all those young guys take steps forward would qualify as a great and successful season.
Chase Hughes be talking about this and writing about it for the Monumental Sports Network. Chase, appreciate your time on short notice, man, and safe drive the rest of the way home if you're not there yet.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
That is Chase Hughes, everybody.
This is the Hoffman Show on the T980 and the Odyssey app.